Welcome back everybody to this new year, and this means also new series for our channel. Now, what if in a single day, sometimes just a few hours of chaos, blood, and steel could rewrite the future of the world? One battle stops an empire in its tracks, another dooms a civilization that had lasted 8,000 years, and a third decides whether democracy as we know it would even exist. Throughout history, certain battles have done far more than crown a victor. They have redrawn maps, shifted religions, sparked revolutions, and set the course of civilization for centuries, sometimes millennia. Welcome to the most consequential battles in history. Over the next 16 episodes, 15 focus on the battles themselves, plus this introduction and a conclusion. We'll explore the clashes that did not just change rulers, but transformed how we live, think, and wage war. Before we examine the dust and smoke of Marathon or the frozen ruins of Stalingrad, let us address a fundamental question. What makes a battle consequential? It is not always the largest, it is not always the bloodiest, and it's certainly not always the most well-known. A truly consequential battle is one where the effects extend far beyond the battlefield. It is a moment when history could have taken an entirely different path, and nearly did. As a history enthusiast who has explored these events extensively, I have identified 4 criteria that we will apply throughout this series to assess their impact. These aren't just my ideas, they're drawn from how scholars like Victor Davis Hanson, a military historian known for books on ancient warfare, and Margaret MacMillan, an expert on modern conflicts and their long shadows, evaluate turning points in human conflict. First, the geopolitical shift. Did the battle create, destroy, or fundamentally shape an empire or the balance of power? Consider a victory that enables centuries of dominance, or a defeat that initiates an irreversible decline. For example, think about how a single clash could topple a superpower, redrawing borders and alliances that last for generations. Second, the cultural and ideological legacy. Did it preserve, spread, or eliminate a way of life, a religion, or a philosophy? Some battles determined whether Greek ideas like democracy and rational inquiry would influence us, whether Europe might have adopted different languages and customs under foreign rule, or whether the United States would remain unified as a single nation rather than fragmenting. Third, military and technological turning points. Did it introduce a new approach to warfare that others had to adopt, or demonstrate that an established method was no longer viable? These include transitions from dominance or heavy cavalry, armored horsemen who could charge through infantry lines, to the use of gunpowder in sieges, which revolutionized how cities were attacked, to the emergence of industrial-scale conflicts, where machines and mass production changed war from seasonal campaigns to total societal mobilization. And finally, fourth, the road not taken. This is perhaps the most intriguing, the what if. What if the defeated side had prevailed? Would Western civilization resemble what we know today? Would slavery have ended in the same era? Would the major conflicts of the 20th century have unfolded differently? We will explore these alternate paths, drawing on insights from historians who remind us that history isn't inevitable. It's shaped by choices, luck, and narrow margins. We'll conclude many episodes with this question, as it defines the fragility of historical outcomes. As MacMillan writes in her Explorations of War, the past is full of moments where things could have gone another way, reminding us to appreciate how precarious our world is. Now, a note on our selection. There are hundreds, perhaps thousands of battles that one could consider consequential. from ancient skirmishes to modern drone strikes. I have chosen 15 that consistently rank highly in historians' assessments, from ancient sources like Herodotus, the Greek father of history, who documented the Greco-Persian Wars based on eyewitness accounts, to contemporary scholars such as Victor Davis Hanson and Margaret MacMillan, who analyze how conflicts shape societies. We will proceed chronologically from the origins of Western civilization in ancient Greece, where city-states first stood against empires, through the fall of Rome and the chaotic transformation of the medieval world into the eras of gunpowder and revolution that introduced firearms and nationalism. And finally, to the mechanized wars of the 20th century, where technology amplified destruction on a global scale. You will encounter familiar figures like Alexander the Great, whose conquests blended cultures, Hannibal, the Carthaginian genius who nearly broke Rome, William the Conqueror, who reshaped England, and Napoleon, whose ambitions redrew Europe, as well as lesser-known pivotal moments where outcomes depended on factors like adverse weather that turned fields into mud, an emperor's overconfidence leading to rushed decisions, or a strategic ambush that caught armies off guard. The list does emphasize Western history, as many of the most thoroughly documented turning points occurred in or directly influenced Europe and its extensions, places where written records and archaeological evidence are abundant. However, we will also examine battles with profound global implications, such as Enjalut's halt of the Mongol advance across Asia and the Middle East in 1260, where Egyptian Mamluks used clever tactics to stop an unstoppable horde, or the fall of Constantinople in 1453, which altered trade routes connecting Europe to the Indian Ocean and marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, ushering in Ottoman dominance. These events reshaped vast regions beyond the West, influencing everything from spice trade to religious dynamics. Did you know battles like these often hinge on overlooked details, as a spy betrayal or a storm at sea, that historians highlight as reminders that great powers can fall from small missteps? And here what lies ahead, with a little glimpse into each battle as a spoiler. We begin in 490 and 480 BC with the Greco-Persian Wars, the determined Greek defense at Marathon and Salamis, where outnumbered forces preserved classical civilization from absorption. At Marathon, citizen soldiers charged across a plain to defy an empire. At Salamis, clever naval tactics in narrow wars turned Persian might against itself. Then, Alexander the Great's decisive engagement at Gaugamela, a bold charge against a vast Persian army that dismantled an empire and fostered cultural exchange between East and West. Imagine a 25-year-old king leading his cavalry through a gap in the lines, blending Greek philosophy with Eastern traditions in what became the Hellenistic world, a fusion era of art, science, and ideas spreading from Greece to India. Hannibal's tactical triumph at Cannae, an encirclement that devastated the Roman forces and compelled Rome to adapt, culminating in the resolution at Zama. Hannibal, crossing the Alps with elephants, nearly broke the rising Roman Republic, but their resilience turned defeat into dominance. The Roman disaster at Adrianople, an ambush that claimed an emperor's life and accelerated the Western Empire's decline into the Middle Ages. Here, barbarian cavalry overran Roman legions, signaling the end of antiquity and the rise of medieval Europe. We'll explore Charles Martel's stand at Tours, a confrontation that halted the Umayyad expansion into Europe in 732. Martel's grandfather of Charlemagne used heavy infantry to stop a Muslim cavalry raid, preserving Christian dominance in the West and shaping the Carolingian dynasty. William the Conqueror's victory at Hastings, a clash of eras and axes that merged Norman and Anglo-Saxon societies, forming the basis of modern England in 1066. An arrow in King Harold's eye, or so legend says, changed language, law, and feudalism across Britain. Then the Mamluks' strategic defeat of the Mongols at Ain Jalut, a battle that protected the Islamic heartlands from further conquest in 1260. Slave soldiers turned rulers use feints and terrain to shatter the myth of Mongol invincibility, saving Cairo and influencing Mamluk Egypt's golden age. Mehmed II's assault on Constantinople, employing massive cannons to breach ancient walls and end the Byzantine Empire in 1453. This second Rome's fall opened the Ottoman era, shifting trade from Silk Road to sea routes and sparking the Renaissance through fleeing scholars. Shifting to naval warfare with Lepanto, a large-scale galley engagement that limited Ottoman dominance in the Mediterranean in 1571. A Christian coalition's victory, with oar-powered ships clashing like floating fortresses, halted Turkish expansion westward. Then the Siege of Yorktown, where American and French forces compelled British surrender, securing independence and inspiring global revolutionary movements in 1781. George Washington's strategy, aided by the French blockade, birthed a nation founded on Enlightenment's ideas. Then Napoleon's final defeat at Waterloo, a battle that marked by rain and mud that redrew Europe's boundaries for generations in 1815. Wellington's thin red line and Blucher's timely arrival ended the French Empire, ushering in a century of relative peace. Gettysburg during the American Civil War, 3 days of intense fighting that shifted momentum and hastened the abolition of slavery in 1863. Pickett's charge across open fields failed, preserving the Union and advancing Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. The Prussian success at Sedan, a rapid victory that unified Germany and sowed the seeds for World War I in 1870. Bismarck's realpolitik trapped Napoleon III, creating a new power balance that led to the 20th century tensions. Then we have the critical turning points of Stalingrad and Midway in World War II. One, an urban siege that eroded Nazi strength in 1942 and 1943. The other, a naval confrontation that altered the Pacific theater in 1942. Soviet house-to-house fighting and US carrier strikes shattered Axis momentum. And then the unprecedented amphibious operation at Normandy, the D-Day landings that opened a second front in Europe in 1944. Thousands stormed the beaches under fire, dooming Hitler's Reich and shaping post-war alliances. In our concluding episode, we will reflect what patterns do these battles reveal about human conflict and our shared history. From ancient spears to atomic bombs, we'll explore recurring themes like technology's role, leadership's impact, and war's human cost. And what's left to say? History is more than dates and rulers. It is the narrative of critical moments when everything was at stake, and a few decisions, brave, misguided, or fortunate, altered the course of events. As Hanson notes, battles are the punctuation marks of history, reminding us how single days define eras. If this subject interests you, as it does to me, subscribe and prepare for the journey if you like. In the next episode, we travel to a plain near Athens, where 10,000 Greeks confronted an army far beyond their match and reshaped the world. I look forward to seeing you there. Bye.